Good morning or afternoon. Good day. This is our watercolor lesson. Today we're going to do a simple city watercolor. Very simple, but I want to touch some things we have already gone over in practice, techniques, and then one little one that's going to make it, uh, you know, learn a little bit about space, like making the scene to have um, tiny bit of perspective, if you can say. Okay. So usually with watercolors, I have always emphasized the pencil is a tool not to give detail, but if you need to sketch something to know where things are going to be, a pencil very lightly will help. You want to keep it lightly because the pencil will stay on your watercolor, and that is fine. You won't erase it once you paint the watercolor, but it'll still be visible if you look for it because you did not erase it. Um, and that's okay. That's how watercolors are. You could look at the masters when they sketch what they're gonna paint. You see their sketch under the paint. Um, okay. In this case, we're gonna use it. Usually, we just go ahead and just paint, which we will do. But for this project, I want to make sure we know where certain things are gonna be. So we're gonna use the pencil. Does that make sense? Okay, so we'll have a sky. You could keep a city, vertical or horizontal, whatever. But vertical, obviously, your buildings and things will be more narrow because you're looking at it vertically. So we're gonna keep it horizontally, and we're gonna get more of that sky. We're gonna do 2/3 up are gonna be the sky. Our buildings will be on part of that. Okay, don't worry about it. We'll be on part of that space, and then we'll do a tiny little bit of perspective. I saw this online, getting inspired by it, and then a few little people walking around and things like that. But I want to keep you in mind the simplicity of how to use watercolors. Okay, we're not gonna put too much details. It's gonna be very transparent, and base of what a watercolor technique should be. Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's paint. Let's draw. So we'll have our 2/3 of sky. This line, I don't really need to make it. I know what 2/3 of my paper are. Excuse me. Hold on a second. Okay. So this piece is from Louis Davidson. I just want to give credit. Louis Davidson, I saw his design and it's very simple, and I wanted to replicate it. It's on YouTube also. It's a larger piece of paper, but it touches key points to keep it simple, and is what I want to emphasize for us. Okay, let me make sure that you see all my materials. We have our paper. Um, I'm putting this paper here so you can see when I mix colors. Okay, my watercolors that I have refilled with my tubes of watercolor. Our painting will be here. Um, and our brushes. My brushes are all just like you have from your kit. They're all the same, okay? It's the same type of tip. I just have a few just in case I need to quickly get a color and I don't have to clean my brush, okay? So I'll leave it here. Oh, and the tissue here at the edge so you can see. Okay, so always good to have your tissue. And in this case, um, you don't have to, but I'm gonna tape my I'm gonna tape my watercolor. And it's not to tape it down, okay, into the into the table, although I should. Then I won't be moving it around. But it's more to give it a frame, okay? To teach you how you could use tape to give it a frame. And then hopefully at the end, if you have some keys, some metal, it could be a piece of metal, keys. I'm going to use an X-Acto knife. It's ideal to kind of scratch the paper a little. Okay. So let me tape the paper. And the reason, again, I'm taping it is to give it a little tiny edge of a frame. I'm giving it a little tiny edge because this already is a very small piece of paper. Um, Let me make sure that it's on the right. We can all see it. Okay. Um, as you can see, I can see through the tape. Okay, so when I put my tape down, I see through the tape and I try to keep that same distance. It's not like I'm in an angle, like that. Okay. So I see through and then I set down the tape once I get that distance that I hope to replicate in all the different sizes. When you do this with masking tape, just keep in mind that you do your painting and don't wait 2 days or three. Don't leave the painting on a board for too many days because the tape then somehow masking tape could react and really attach, and when you take it off, it rips the paper. But in the same day, it should be fine. Okay, so now when we're done with the painting, when I pull this, I'm gonna get a really nice crispy frame because the paint won't be touching this part of the paper. So to wet our paper, and this is what I want to emphasize. I've seen this with students. They are hesitant to wet their paper. When I say wet the paper, um, you really have to wet the paper. Like it has to have a lot of water. Okay. Um, but before we get to that, let me finish drawing. Let's finish drawing. So we have 2/3. One, one, two, and this is the third one here. That's gonna be the floor. Actually, um, to be honest, let's see. Why don't hmm. um yeah, okay. Just to give an idea. In 2/3, we're gonna draw a line here, around here. But now I'm thinking that we're gonna wet the entire paper. Okay. As I talk, I'm gonna sketch. Um, and it's hard with the video. I really want to make sure that you can see this, but I cannot really draw it too harsh on my paper because then it's gonna be seen. So just lightly build some buildings around, some short, some high. Just very, very lightly, okay? Um, it's basically rectangles that go up, down, some are thin, okay? You see some of them here, sorry. Okay. Um, and then maybe I'm gonna curve it. I'm gonna curve here. The edge of a fence. You see, now I know where the curve ends. You see that curve? And then the post will could anything you can actually do with the paint and you don't need to draw, don't draw it. You know, you're gonna do it with the painting. Try to avoid drawing. Put down in pencil what you actually need to be aware of for your painting. Okay. So I think this is enough. I know this is my line where um, the whole thing is gonna get painted, watered down, and then painted. Um, you'll see in a moment. And then this line here is the base of the buildings and the skyline, the base of it. And then a curve like this is a curve where this is the land and this is the edge of the for the water, which will be here. Maybe I could move it a little more here so we can see more water. Okay. Excuse me. All right. Let's get started. So when I say wet the paper, really wet the paper, because what we're gonna do now, with let's say, if we can do two colors, orange and orange, and I'm gonna start activating my orange by putting water. I need to put a lot of water on my orange. Okay, so I leave that there. We're gonna use orange and yellow. But yeah, wet the paper. I'm gonna use a tissue. Usually you will have, which is more expensive because they're bigger for watercolor, and the hair, depending the quality is what makes it more expensive. But a big brush, right? A big brush will carry more water. So if when you really need to wet the entire paper, watercolor artists they use like a huge, very big brush, okay, that they can make sure that carries a lot of water. You could wet by using tissue or something because we want to wet the entire paper. Now, what that's going to do, the paper is going to start absorbing that water. If you wait too long, the paper eventually, in, I don't know, 4 or 5 minutes, will absorb that water. Before it absorbs that water and dries, you want to put the colors down so they disperse in a wet paper. Okay. I have told you many times, and many artists do start all their paintings, watercolor artists, they start all their paintings wetting the paper. Oh, because they want that effect. Whatever they're going to paint, even if later they're going to put more details or paint more opaque colors, they will have a base color that is very diffuse, transparent, with a very nice watercolor effect. And that's why they wet the entire paper. If you start painting, you know, um, not wet on wet, just wet on dry, and your whole painting is wet on dry, sure, that's a great watercolor, but it will not have that transparency effect that watercolors are known for. You will get that effect of watercolor transparency throughout your painting by doing wet on wet. And wet on wet means your paper is also wet with clean water before you put paint. Okay. So I'm going to wet my tissue, put a lot of water, really a lot of water. because I want to make sure that my paper is really wet. Okay, I can see it's very wet because it's shining. Okay, you can use your brush too. I want to make sure that everything is really wet. See what's going to happen when I put. You see the paper starts to try to bend. That's fine. That's why taping it is really useful, although you don't have to tape it, okay? But let's put the orange. Let's see what happens from above. You see how this orange, get your orange and put it down and spread it. This is what I need you to really get used to and don't be afraid of, okay? I seen the students, please, hesitant um, to wet their paper, and then when they put their paint, I can tell their paper wasn't that wet. Your paper shows that it's really wet when you put your paint down and it looks like this. Look how dissipated that is. Um, and I'm sorry it's very shiny through the light that I have. Um, but you get the idea. Now I'm gonna switch to yellow. I'm gonna put some of the orange down here. I'll explain you why. So it goes up here, we see, and down here. And in the middle is gonna be our yellow. Okay. But you see how subtle it becomes because I'm spreading it all around my orange. Okay. Let's get the yellow before it dries. Um, okay, let me get my other yellow with another brush. This is why I have two brushes. But if you have one, you will have to clean it. Okay. The yellow goes in the middle, remember? This is very bright yellow. So I have to put water. And if you need to spread it with more water, you see, I'm adding more water because I feel like it's drying enough that I may not get this effect of um, subtleness. So a little bit over here needs more yellow. Okay, so what we got is a very subtle transition from orange to yellow, yellow to orange. And this helps really good because we're gonna have water here, remember? I could make the street look like it just rained because basically anything on the floor being water or the ground is reflecting what's above. Okay, so this is a mirror effect right in the middle, right? What's up here reflects down here. And that mirror effect makes us believe that you're looking at either water, a body of water, right? That's reflecting what's above, like a mirror. Or if it's the ground, it's just rain and the floor is wet, and that's why it's reflecting the sky. Does that make sense? So next time it rain, look at the ground. More likely, it will be reflecting some of the colors or things that are above it in the sky. Okay. I gotta be careful now with the paint I put in. You see, because it's gonna be much brighter because of um, the fact that the paper, sorry, has already started to dry. Okay, so now we're gonna paint our buildings slowly. um, a bit of the ground, and then the perspective effect of showing that this edge here from the ground to the water is in perspective, and then a few people, and that's it. I want to keep it simple, okay? But you see how we just, um, excuse me. I'm gonna try to press this down just to see. The paper bends, and this absorb, and I like the effect. This paper absorb a little bit of what was happening up here. You could use your fingers. I use my fingers a lot and make effects. Anytime you will tap your fingers on wet, it will make like a little bubble. So try all those different techniques. Okay, so the buildings will be blue, different tones of blues with the orange. So I already have orange here. Let me get some blue. And the way you make different tones of blues is by having blue put down with different amounts of water, right? More water, more transparent, more light. Less water, more. That means more blue will be darker. So I gotta be really careful. Let's test something here because this is not entirely dry. So I want to test if it becomes green, and I think it will, just for the fact that this is yellow. It's not turned. Yep, I can see a little bit of green. It's okay. We're gonna have to wait a little for this to dry. Okay. Another thing that's happening is I don't have a sharp edge of the form that I'm making because it's still wet, so the water is still trying to dissipate. Does that make sense what I'm saying? But I'm making different sizes. And to be honest, we're gonna want that sharp edge, but for some of them, we may not want the sharp edge. So for some of the buildings, we'll want the sharp edge because we want to emphasize they may be closer or, you know. But the fact that we cannot see that sharpness in some of them, it actually represents that the space um, between our eyes and this building or whatever building is foggy or there's a distance. Okay, this one is lighter. You see, I'm not collecting more blue, so this one is going to be a lighter building back here. I'm going to go back with it, but I got to keep this line here. Okay, I got to keep that baseline. Remember the baseline we have here? And I'm going to fill it with buildings in a moment. Okay, don't worry about it. Let's make one here, like what is that? The Prudential building, I think, goes like this. The thing I'll have to, if I start, I have to replicate exactly how the entire skyline of Boston um, looks like. But I'm just gonna try to do something that mimics it, but it may not be it. Okay, so I'm putting a lot of water in this corner, getting my blue, and then I choose how much of it I want to show. So this is really wet. You see, I can tell. Um, Keep them small, okay? Make sure you keep them very small. Some are very thin, you see. And if it turns very green, it's because you're mixing it with the yellow under, okay? Um, some are square, like a perfect square. All this ground will be the same up to a point, okay? I'm keeping it very light. And the reason is because later I'll add things that will be um, darker, especially this edge here to differentiate the water from the buildings is very important to keep it um, dark. So I'll go back here very dark. Um, but the buildings we're making are very light, some of them. Um, okay. A few thin lines. This is very thin. We're gonna start adding a little bit of orange soon. And we have to actually let all of this dry, okay? But if you notice, everything is very light to start with and watery. Um, and I kept the center kind of a little bit free. Okay. Let's add another color with the orange, and then what we'll do is that we'll go back with blue but darker, meaning less water. Okay. But you see how we created a skyline literally just by making these very thin rectangles that some of them really do go thin, some of them are more square, especially towards the bottom. And when we go back with the darker blue, we'll define even more buildings, okay? But we're keeping this very simple. To be able to control your water, put it to the side here. Because if I keep grabbing from here, all my color, it will always be very strong color because that's where the color is kept. But over here, I can add water and control how much pigment I really want to bring. Let's see what happens if I try to. Make some buildings in here that are a little more reddish. Some of the stuff here looks green, and it's because again it mixed the blue mixed with the yellow. It's okay. These are very strong orange here, but let's dissipate it by making it lighter. I don't know. Let's see. That was me trying to get rid of some pigment. Let me do an entire building, maybe back here. You see, this simplicity is what I want to get you used to. And it's tricky in the sense that we are unconsciously, like I have said this before, what I'm going to say now. And watercolor does this a lot. Okay, when you paint very simplistically in watercolor, you're basically you want to make the viewer finish part of your painting for you. So you're giving them the right uh, quantity of things to read what something is. Oh, that is a flower, but it's not entirely very detailed, which means that I as the viewer, I'm finishing the sentence, if you want to. That's a good analogy. So all these rectangles and squares do makes you think of a city because the way they're set up, and we don't see windows, we don't see doors, we don't need to. Our the viewer's eye uh, don't need to see them to know these are buildings. So that's what I'm trying to say. So this happens with everything, with the water, with the sky. When you look at a watercolor painting, a lot of what we see, we ourselves have to interpret, if that makes sense. So another type of painting may be more specific in detail, of showing you specifically every detail of what is represented. Okay, let me go with the blue, dark blue, because we gotta get this moving. Um, it's the same blue. I just put in less water. Um, I'm a little bit worried that I should wait for all of this to dry, because I want those sharp edges. Remember. Um, so let's wait a little. And with dark blue, what I'm going to do is at least the line this base here. Remember I said there's a base right here. So I'm drawing a straight line of dark blue to keep a base for our buildings and everything. Don't worry, this is gonna get move up. Now with that, I'm gonna outline then our path here. Remember that round thing? We're gonna just do it here and start turning and let it die out, because I don't want the whole thing to be dark. So now I clean my brush, and just use a little bit of water now to kind of bring this down. Very subtle, you see. Basically, I'm taking that edge and dissipating it down so it doesn't become. It is a line. Don't get me wrong. It is a line, but it's a very subtle line now. Hmm. I add more blue to dissipate more. And I'm going to bring lines down. Let me clean my brush to make sure those lines look like lines. What would happen if I use just a clean brush to make these lines? So, well, not clean brush, but a brush that only has water. Let's see. Will it grab that? Kind of. Now the straight lines down, what they do, very subtle straight lines down. They make us believe that the floor is wet. Don't keep them all too straight. I mean, some are thicker than others, but and then again, it's very subtle, very subtle. So I'll stop right there. But did you see that? A bunch of little lines, subtle. Now, I'm gonna go back with dark blue. Because I want to make sure that this is really dark right at the edge right here. I mean, dark, but not doesn't have to be extremely dark, right up to like maybe here. And I'm lifting my brush to make it more subtle. Using my finger to blend it in. Okay, so now let's bring this line up. So it's, but I bring it up by making buildings, you see. So these buildings now are going to be darker, or whatever lines I draw. And I have to bring this up by, look, mixing it up, and then subtly blend it up. Blend it meaning softly softly diffusing or blending, if that's, yeah, blending it. And if something is too dark, then you add more water and try to clear it. Maybe a square right here as a building. Maybe a line here. Okay. But I have to take all this line and you see what's happening. I made the line, I added blue, but I subtly, in a very subtle way, went up, brought it up, and then made some other buildings a little darker by adding more pigment to that blue. You see, and maybe some buildings have to be bigger in the sense like thicker. They take big chunks of space here. um, you know, I have to not be afraid of the line, delining that aspect of it. So, you know, like it's gonna be dark, so I added water because it was too dark. My brush is carrying too much water. Always be aware of how much water your brush is carrying, because you may have the right color, but you may not want a certain amount of transparency that so much water is going to bring to your painting. Um, it's looking good, right? I think that's good. As the buildings go up, they, they become more subtle. All right, let's do this fence here. Then the light posts, a few people, and that's it. Um, the water can stay like that. It does represent water, this area here. Okay, so the post will be literally just sticks going in the distance, and the tallest ones will be closer to us. So, and we're gonna make a combination of um, let's see. So let's first start with let me start with orange to make this light rectangle type of forms. And one goes here. You see, one goes here. So 1, 2, 3. So what will happen is, like, as if it's moving through the curve, they're gonna get closer. Hear me out. Closer and thinner. Closer and smaller. Sorry. Okay. So 1, 2, 3. One here. Thinner, smaller, closer. Okay. So I'm gonna align it with the blue. You see, so it's kind of like a rectangle like this. So you can see it better. You see it here now. One, two. Here's the other one. And again, as they go away, they get smaller, thinner, right? Smaller and closer. Now, the reason why they get closer is because in distance, for perspective, you see they get closer. There's a distance here between these two that over here it got closer. That's what creates the effect of perspective. And now I just did little sticks that are, we'll figure this out in a moment. Okay, like what happens here. All right, so in between those, we could probably do a chain. I know they sometimes put a chain. So a chain will be like this curve. So from here goes here. Here it goes right there. Here it goes right. You see how it's curving? Curves, curves, curves. Did that make sense? You see? I just made a letter U and aligned them all to, got them to be together. So we could say that every two, 1, 2, there's a light post coming right here. So 1, 2, this will have it. I mean, there should be a light post here, but we're not going to do it because then it's really closer to us. So 1, 2 light posts here, 1, 2 light posts here, 1, 2 light posts here. And you see the light posts, you'll see how they're also by distance will be getting smaller and closer. Here we have to be a little brave, okay? So follow me. And I'm using blue again, a little darker. So 1, 2, our light post comes out of here. If I need more darkening, I'll do it in a moment. Up, 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 up to maybe here. And our light post will be here. See, here's will be the light. Kind of like a drop. Here's the little roof that they tend to have with the little ball on top. Okay. Let me make the light post thicker. Just a tiny bit thicker. Because this is the one that's closer to us. So it's going to be thicker. If you're not getting your line too straight, there you go. So 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1 has to be here. I said it will go shorter. Remember? Maybe about here. It's got to be shorter, so up to here. Okay. And the little roof here has to be shorter because it's going away in distance. 1, 2, 1, 2. The third one has it. You see how it's next to the third? 1, 2. The third one has it. So 1, 2 is right here. Thinner, shorter, and they're becoming closer. Let me get enough blue. Here we go, up to here. This time. Up to here. Here's the little hat or roof for the light. And there you go. 1, 2, 3. You see? Get my blue. Water's already here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So it's got to be around here. That's a lot of water. Shorter, closer. You get the idea. It's up to here. The next one here. I should have made it shorter. We're going to end it here. And the next one here. And you see how we make perspective. I'm doing a bunch of little lines now back here very close to each other, okay? I have to put something in between back here because it became really, and you'll see what we'll do here to kind of cover this up here. Okay, So purple is also a very dark color. Let's see if we add purple to make certain things darker. And we could, in this case, add a tiny little bit of black if we need to, but just a little bit, okay? But I haven't done that yet. That's if I feel like I'm gonna need to. Um, okay, I haven't felt that I do yet. I'm adding a little bit of purple into this pole. Um, Great. And I think I'm gonna use this purple. Let's do this now. Why don't we do this right now? That was a lot of water. Because with purple and blue, what we're going to do is we're gonna make a tree here. Some trees, small trees. So look, what is trunk, branches, lots of branches. That's what's gonna make our tree look real. But they have to be black. If your color is not setting that well on the paper, you need to wet it, the color, so it's more smoother. When it touches the paper, it will like when you sign your painting. Trust me, more likely in oil painting they use a little bit of extra oil, and in watercolor you use a little bit of water to make the brush run smoothly, so you could get that thin signature effect or pen. A little base for the trees. I'm not sure where they are, what's holding them up, but maybe there's one here that's above the others, you see, but they're like in perspective too in some way. Okay, so here's the people. Let's do someone, or I want to put them right in the middle, maybe here or here. You see, maybe there's some here far away and maybe some are here. So let's make a couple, two legs, body, and it's kind of moving down, and someone next to it. And then down here, maybe a few just lines down. Like if it's more people very far away. Okay, the way we ground it is a little bit of maybe shadow like that. And someone here. Or a couple here. Let's see. Why don't we make a couple? But I don't want to cover our perspective effect too much. So why don't we do them here? Let's see. His head is gonna be here. Body, legs. That's it. And she's next to it. All of this is purple, okay? Dark purple head. And you see what I'll do in a moment to make them more interesting. So the two little tips of legs. I need water. My paint is dry. You see, this is what I meant about making the brush run smoothly. Okay, some type of shadowing on the ground with lines. Okay, maybe a little bit of black on our bodies of the people to make them more grounded. Just a little bit of black for the people. Okay, you see two little legs, and but now I'm gonna add something here very interesting in red. Let's see, bright red. I'm gonna add We're almost on time. You see this very bright red? And I have to make it opaque, okay? Because it has to go over everything that's already here. So opaque meaning I can't really have transparency. I'm using water just to get the color out, but it's not water to create transparency, okay? So right here, an oval, or let's see, let's start with like an actual semicircle. This way or that way? Maybe this way. You getting what I just did? It's like an umbrella. I was gonna thinking of a semicircle. Sorry, oval. But we'll do a semicircle. And there's a little line right here that he's holding it. That's a couple holding a red umbrella. It's like a little trademark for romantic paintings. Very simple souvenir romantic paintings tend to have a couple with a red umbrella over watercolors that are rain. So we got our watercolor done. This is just basic. Again, I keep emphasizing. Now let's see. We're gonna keep the sky like that. Now, I think we're done. Okay. If anything, I'll sign it here. You'll sign it here. Okay. But there's one more step we're going to do. And again, for this one, I'm going to use paint. But I want you to make sure that for you to use any type of sharp metal. Doesn't have to be, sorry, it doesn't have to be extremely sharp. It could be like a little metal cap or, a key. I have used a key. You have seen me use a key. But I have an X-Acto knife here. Okay. And I'm going to use it to scratch where my light is and get that paper out. If you have acrylic paint, you could, with acrylic, paint opaque white. This effect really works when what's around it is actually darker colors. The sky is pretty light that it's hard to make the contrast. And be gentle too, it gives it a little three-dimensional aspect too, but here it will work, you see, because what's around it is dark. And make sure you rip the paper. So if you go one way, get the other one, so the paper actually does come out. And it gives it like a three-dimensional effect, yes. Maybe, yeah, it won't make a dramatic or visual effect here, because again, I said, if this was blue or darker blue because it's the water that we want, then these scratches will be visible because everything around it is darker. Like if I scratch in this dark blue. But we'll leave it at that. I'm going to take out the tape to show you. We're just right on time on the hour. I'll leave my paints open because I want to leave them like that for a while till everything dries. But if I take my tape out, I will have, you see, this little edge of a frame. And I hope to bring, I don't know if the camera will focus. But at home, you could always, like I said, pause the video, take your time with what you're doing, come back, take a break. the scratch paper. Now it will fall. But you can see we learned the basic two things I wanted to emphasize. Well, three is the subtlety of wetting your paper, and when you add color, once that paper is really wet, it has to be very wet. The color does look become very subtle and gentle and dispersed. We already have done this, but some of the students do still hesitate, and I can see the color not blending with the paper because the paper was not wet enough. So we did that, the whole thing, right? Orange and yellow in the middle. And then we did the building. So the second concept was the the um, the idea that you want to just suggest things, buildings, curve, people, the trees. Like you want to gently suggest them. You don't have to be that specific or clear about every single detail. And the third thing was just a basic concept of perspective that things as they go down on perspective, in this line is a curve, but if it was like point of view in the horizon, they will diminish in size, right? Because they're going away farther, and they got closer. If there's a pattern, right? Because these lampposts do follow a certain pattern. They're getting closer because they also going farther away. So they get closer, they get smaller. Okay. Same thing with this pole. Um, they're very big light posts, and I could have done some more here, some more lines. Uh, let's see. You get the idea. Um, okay. That's our painting for today. Enjoy the rest of the day. Oh, and the people, yeah, the people are very also suggested and subtle. And thank you for Louis Davidson. I'll come up with. I have a few ideas of watercolor projects, but this was very clever because it's just um, touches on so many simple things, and we want to keep things simple on watercolor. So have a great day. Okay, see you next time.